Kevin Durant is in the news lately for some of the comments that he said. When asked or questioned about, or when discussing, because I don't know what prompted this or what brought it up, but when discussing the greatest of all time, the argument of greatest of all time, we usually hear the same few names. We hear LeBron James, we hear Michael Jordan, we hear Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, we hear Magic Johnson. To a lesser extent, we hear Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan, Shaq. We hear those type of names. The name that you never hear is Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant was questioning that, pretty much saying, what has he not done? Why is he not in the considered when discussing the greatest of all time conversation? Why is it that when people say X player is the greatest of all time or Y player is the greatest of all time, they're never really discussing Kevin Durant? I talked about this briefly when I was talking about Lamar Jackson. We're at a day and age where greatness is a lot closer than it used to be. And what that means is, let's look at the Michael Jordan era. There was Michael Jordan, and then nobody was close to Michael Jordan. Like, close. Now, you had talent, obviously. Clyde Drexler, Dominique Wilkins. You had Charles Barkley. You had a young Kobe. You had Hakeem Olajuwon. All great players. All-time players. But there was such a gap between them and Michael Jordan that there was really no discussion of who was the best player. When you look at today's basketball and you look at basketball or the Kevin Durant era or the era that Kevin Durant has played basketball in, talent is so close. Like, let's not get it twisted. I don't think talent-wise, I don't think Kevin Durant is much further than LeBron James is. I don't think that Kevin Durant is much further than, let's say, Steph Curry is. I don't think there's much of a gap between talent-wise between Kevin Durant and Tracy McGrady or Kevin Durant and Carmelo Anthony back in the day. Kevin Durant or, let's say, Kawhi Leonard. So because of that, like I said about Lamar Jackson, accolades matter. Because when talent doesn't have such a gap where there's just like, we can't say much, then there has to be something there. We have to throw in accolades. And excuse me, for a career, Kevin Durant has averaged 27.4 points a game, 4 assists a game, 7 rebounds a game. He's one of the greatest scorers of all time. But when we talk about accolades, that is why. You see, I was never upset with Kevin Durant for choosing Golden State. I don't think that Kevin Durant's move to Golden State wasn't a snake move. I thought that he made the best decision for him to win. And Kevin Durant was at a point of his career where he was dangerously falling in that Charles Barkley, Dominique Wilkins pool of great but never won a championship. John Stockton. Kevin Durant was dangerously living in that realm. And going to Golden State was obviously the best option for him. So I was never in ultimately winning a championship. So I never was upset. I was never hating on, I was never mad that Kevin Durant went to Golden State to essentially play alongside Steph, Clay, and all them and get a championship or two. But what it did was it forever changed this conversation. I'm not gonna say he was a snake. I'm not gonna say this, that, and the third. But what it did do is it drastically changed this conversation. This greatest of all time conversation. Drastically. That's one thing that I will admit and agree with everyone else as far as that move did affect this conversation, because with a move like that comes expectation. And it doesn't just come expectation as far as what you do with that team. It's always about what you do after that team as well. You see, Kevin Durant set the bar incredibly high for himself going to Golden State. You're playing alongside arguably a top 10 player of all time and arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest point guard of all time in Steph Curry. And you essentially did what you wanted to do. You won 2 championships. You would have won a third if everyone didn't get hurt. But people looked at that move however they want to look at that move. People saying it's the weakest move from a superstar. Cool. Got you. I hear you. I hear you, Slim. But now, whether you understood it or not, there is now an expectation that if and when you do leave this team, you have to win a championship. Without that team, without the greatness of Steph Curry, without the greatness of Klay Thompson, without the greatness of Draymond Green, without the greatness of Steve Kerr. And you haven't done that. And on top of that, I understand that we're not breaking down the entire situations, but you had Kyrie Irving, you had James Harden, you had now Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. You played alongside Russell Westbrook. You played alongside an MVP in James Harden, an MVP in Russell Westbrook, an MVP or future MVP at the time, Russell Westbrook and James Harden. You played 2-time MVP in Steph Curry. You played finals MVP or finals champion Kyrie, and Devin Booker, who has a 70-point game in his career. You see, if we just talk about talent, then yes, Kevin Durant is most definitely in the conversation of greatest of all time. But the greatest of all time conversation isn't just about talent. Because when we talk about talent, there isn't much difference up there, up in that realm. You see, people didn't put Steph Curry in that top 10 conversation until when? 2022. When he did what? Win a championship after Kevin Durant. Mind you, Steph Curry won a championship before Kevin Durant. But nobody put him in that top 10 conversation, that greatest point guard of all time conversation, until when? 2022. Again, before then, he already had 3 championships. He had 2 MVPs, one of them being unanimous. And he was already considered the greatest shooter of all time. But what didn't they call him? A top 10 player. Arguably the greatest point guard of all time until 2022, when he won a championship after playing alongside Kevin Durant. And that's how it is. Skill doesn't matter here. Because LeBron James is skilled. Michael Jordan skilled. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is skilled. Magic Johnson is skilled. Shaq is skilled. And those skills ain't much apart from each other. So now when you tag on accolades and how you got those accolades, that's where the conversation changes, Kevin Durant. I've been hearing saying that I think that Kevin Durant is arguably the greatest offensive weapon of all time. And yes, that's even the person that I'm wearing his hoodie, Kobe. I think Kevin Durant is arguably a greater offensive weapon than Kobe Bean Bryant. But when we talk about greatest of all time, until I see you be the best player on a team definitively and win a championship, like Michael Jordan was, like LeBron James was several times, that's why Kevin Durant's not in the conversation. And I love Kevin Durant, both from the DMV area. I'm never going to say anything bad about Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is great. I've been on this hill saying Kevin Durant's better than Larry Bird. But even Larry Bird has things that Kevin Durant hasn't. And that, KD, is why people don't put you in the greatest of all time conversations. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.